today, really. It got mentioned in the gifts about Job, and towards the end of Job, Job repents of his saying too much, going too far, and even after he said that, the Lord basically gets hold of him and slaps him around the chops. And one of the ways he does that, he shows him things in creation, particularly animals. There's a number of animals the Lord mentions. He mentions the horse, how it loves the battle. And I grew up a mile away from a place called Aintree Racecourse, where they have a very famous race over here called the Grand National. And the horses go 4 miles, jumping big fences, and they throw their jockeys off. It's 40 starts, about 15 finish. And people try to ban it because they say it's cruel to the horse. But the horse, when it's thrown its jockey off, carries on and gets in the way. They love the battle. It talks about the ostriches. And the ostrich is deprived of wisdom. It doesn't think things through. So it lays its eggs where it'll get tread on because it doesn't think things through. And even in the 4,000 or 5,000 years since the book of Job was written, the ostrich hasn't learned any better. So maybe God made it that way, and it's not evolving. It talks about the conies, little rock rabbits, and the thing with the conies is that their strength is that they know that they're weak, which is a very clever thing, really. So they hide in the rocks. And then when you get to the end of chapter 40 and chapter 41, it talks about 2 particular animals, Behemoth or Behemoth. I don't know how you pronounce it. I've never heard it pronounced. I've only seen it written down. Behemoth, I think it is, but I prefer Behemoth because it sounds funny. And Leviathan. And much is written about these 2 beasts, and much more than the other animals that are there. And there's lots of speculation about what animals they are, because a horse is identified as a horse and an ostrich is an ostrich. But what's a behemoth and what's a leviathan? And I'll give you an idea of what it probably is, but I'm not trying to be certain about that. I'm not trying to be dogmatic about that. The Lord uses the animals to show Job and to show us a few things. Apparently in Jewish folklore or fable or tradition, Behemoth and Leviathan are going to be food at the end of days. I don't know where they get that from, but it's going to be food tonight anyway. So Leviathan, what we want to do is identify kind of the idea of what these animals represent, and then see the detail that's given about them. So we identify them. This is the last verse regarding Leviathan. There's an awful lot written about Leviathan. But this is the verse that identifies all the things that go before. He beholds all high things. He is a king over all the children of pride. So Leviathan represents the nature of pride. And as I say, we look at some of the detail of that. And Behemoth, which comes in the chapter before, a little bit less is written about him. In verse 19, it says of chapter 40, it says, "He is the chief of the ways of God. He that made him can make his sword approach unto him." And the thing there is that Behemoth represents humility, because the word of God, his sword, God's sword is his word, can approach unto Behemoth. And so he represents humility, and what we want to show is the nature of these 2 things. And sometimes, especially in the world of Christianity, I do believe that people misunderstand the idea of humility. What we're going to see is Behemoth is big and strong. He's not someone, or it's not a creature that lacks, if you like, it's not a lack of backbone. This is one is as strong as the other. And in the end, because with something like this, you think, well, what was happening if they both had a fight? And I'll show you the fight between Behemoth and Leviathan at the end. Compare them to contrast. So we want to compare them. I suppose for us, when it comes to Behemoth, when it comes to humility, we don't want to be the opposite of what we can see. And with pride, we want to be the opposite of what we can see. In the book of Acts, when he received the Holy Spirit, Peter says, "This is that." right? So what's written and what's described is exactly what's happening. I think in the Jewish world they have an expression that this is not that. Yeah. Okay, I can't put my camera on now because you see in the slideshow, but in my hand, believe it or don't, I have a tin of custard, which is a prize. So this has got nothing to do with the talk particularly. Words at the top: hippo, poto, monstro, sequiped, deleophobia. All right. Now, if anyone can, if you put it in the chat, that's a fear of something. And if you can figure out what it's the fear of, you win a tin of custard. So I don't mess about when I do slideshows. People have won. I should buy the custard by the case because I've had to give so much custard away down the years. The answer is right in front of your eyes, but it's not a frog. All right. I don't know why the frog's there at all. Actually, there's nothing to do with the frog, and it's nothing to do with the talk. But you can guess if you like, and we'll see if anyone gets it. Ah, gosh, somebody's won the custard, right? I suppose that's supposed to happen at the end. So anyway, Leviathan and Behemoth. What I'm going to suggest is that they represent two creatures that would have been in Egypt and North Africa at the time of Job. Okay, so I say I'm not trying to be definitive because it's more important what they represent than what they were. But you've got the crocodile and you've got the hippopotamus. Okay, so what I'm going to suggest is Behemoth is a hippopotamus and Leviathan is a crocodile. And you'll see the descriptions that mostly it fits. There's some other things that maybe don't fit exactly, but we can talk through them as well. Why has it stopped? What mouse? Okay. So this is our mate, Behemoth, and I'll tell you something about Behemoth. Talking about them having a fight, by the way. Somebody asked. There's a pastor down on the south coast called Pastor Jimmy. He's a Fijian and he's been in the British Army. He was actually a PE teacher. He taught Prince William, or he taught him PE, bossed him about. And somebody said, what would happen if me and Pastor Jimmy has a fight? Okay, who would win? And I said, well, it depends what kind of fight. If it was a sumo fight, I think I'd have half a chance because he'd have to wear a suit and I wouldn't. I could come as I am. And the other thing is, if he touched me first cup of coffee in the morning, there's no doubt who would win. All right. So this is Behemoth, and one thing that might surprise you about Behemoth, the hippopotamus, it's not fat. A hippopotamus is not fat. It's thick-skinned. Okay, that's one of its strengths. Is it's thick-skinned, and the other thing that goes along with its skin is it's waterproof. And you have the expression in England. I'm sure you have it in the USA. Water off a duck's back. You know, and it's a strength that we do need to develop. Is any unnecessary criticisms or any little things that aren't quite right, anything that can knock you off serving the Lord, let it be water off a duck's back. Yes. Now what's going on? Excuse me. Okay. So we look at some of the scriptures to do with Behemoth. Behemoth it is really, isn't it? You can't really excuse mispronouncing it when it's right in front of your eyes. So there you go. That's the end of that. Behold now Behemoth, which I made with you. He eats grass as an ox. So he's clean beast. In the Leviticals, the Old Testament laws, the clean and the unclean were marked by certain characteristics, and the clean beast would not eat anything that had once been alive, anything that was dead. When it comes to us in the Lord, we live off the living, we live off good things. You know, people, if you read the newspapers or you just follow somebody around in the shop, and they're talking about their friends in such a way, you know, people love it in the newspapers when somebody gets into disgrace or something terrible happens to them, and that becomes the conversation, and that becomes almost meat for them. You know, to live off the dead. So a Behemoth is clean. You know, he's a clean beast. He eats grass like an ox. See now, his strength is in his loins, and his force is in the navel of his belly. He has what you might call a low center of gravity. And I suppose for us, we're not just believers, we're knowers. You know, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. And flesh and blood hasn't revealed that to us. And that's in our innermost being. You know, and that's our gravity. We're not aspiring to believe, we believe. And that's a strength. And it keeps us, you know, we can be, with all this power, with all these testimonies, when we meet people, we can be down to earth. We don't talk big. We don't talk over people's heads. We don't talk in terms. You know, our strength is low down, if you like. Jesus came to earth, and although much of what he says takes a little bit of working out, it wasn't because he talked over people's heads. He talked to them about things that they knew, and that was, you know, that was a strength. He moves his tail like a cedar. The sinews of his stones are wrapped together. The first thing is, I suppose, that you know, there are people that claim that Leviathan is a dragon, and I'll explain to you a couple of reasons why I don't believe that. And neither do I believe that there were dragons, by the way. If you go to the British Library, British Museum, they have dragons from Babylon portrayed upon the walls. Upon the they used to have blue fired tiles, so it's all these shiny bricks. The bricks had a I can't remember what it's called now, a coating where it's all shiny, and they had dragons on them. But the dragon was a composite beast. It was made up of parts of other animals. It was to represent. It was a representation of thoughts and what they thought was powerful. And there was lots of them in the ancient world, composite beasts. But the reason people say that, and then the other idea is that the Behemoth is a dinosaur. Right now, obviously there were dinosaurs because they've got the bones, but because it says he moves his tail like a cedar, and a hippopotamus's tail is a very, it's not a cedar anyway, but it doesn't say his tail is like a cedar. It says he moves his tail like a cedar, and that's a different thing. Okay, so just I'll touch on those things without going into them too much, because they're not really very important. And but it says the sinews of his stones are wrapped together, and here we go. So in the Bible, the word for stones, another word for stones is testes, which is etymologically is connected with testament. It talks about someone putting their hand under Abraham's thigh. Well, I think it might have been slightly different than that when it comes to making a covenant. And in the Bible, there's 5 obvious covenants. There's the covenant with Noah, that there won't be a flood anymore, that there'll always be seed time and harvest, and that's signaled by a rainbow in the sky, which you see from time to time, and that'll always be the way of it. There's a covenant there, the Abrahamic covenant. I'll make you a great nation and bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. It's something that's highly criticized, but historically, that's how it goes. There's the Mosaic covenant, the law of Moses, and which is still good and has much wisdom in it. The Davidic covenant, where the Lord made a promise to David about there'd always be someone to sit upon his throne. Right, well, obviously, we're not going to go into them tonight. And the new covenant, but it says in the previous one, was it the sinews of his stones are wrapped together. So if you want to strengthen the new covenant, it won't hurt you to look at the others. It strengthens them. I particularly like them all, actually. But I like reading the law of Moses. There was one particular law. I'll tell you how I use it at the moment is in England, they got rid of the death penalty in the mid-60s. Okay, so in the Old Testament, it was a life for a life, right? But the reason they got rid of the death penalty wasn't because they thought that that was wrong, because quite regularly they kept hanging the wrong person. And a few years later, they find out about it. And but there's another law in the Old Testament that it's better to let the guilty go than to punish the innocent. So that overriding thing is why they got rid of the death penalty. And I just find it interesting. And just on a local thing, we have a YouTube channel, and some people watch on YouTube that really should come in a meeting or don't come to the meetings at all. They're out of fellowship. And I think I'm not going to pursue them because lots of people that watch it are innocent. So I'm not going to pursue those who maybe should do things different and punish the innocent. And that solves the question for me. I just get on with my business because I can find a principle in the law of Moses which I can use in the new covenant. They're wrapped together. So continuing about Behemoth, it says, surely the mountains bring him forth food where all the beasts of the field play. He's safe to be around. Okay, so Behemoth is strong. I used to have a thing when I was doing street outreaching, where I'd pick tough-looking fellas, and I'd say I had a question for them. It nearly always worked, actually. The only time somebody was ever horrible to me was when I hadn't asked the question. So the question was, so I'd find really tough-looking fellas, skinheads. There's plenty of them here with tattoos or, leather jackets, which meant they rode motorbikes. You can often talk to those. And I used to say to them, what makes you afraid? That was my question. And what I was looking for was, are they tough or are they hard? Because tough people will be afraid of something. Might be afraid of doing something stupid, but hard people are afraid of nothing, and they're a worry. People that are afraid of nothing are a worry, and we'll see that comes in with Leviathan. But that was one way I made it, because I knew it from life, really, that there was some very, very... I knew a lot of tough people, and I'm not one, and never have been. But I just realised that there was some that was safe to be around, and some not. And the difference is if they have a degree of humility. And it talks here about where all the beasts of the field play. One thing about fellowship, about assemblies, is that one of the like, you can have in the mines, you used to have canaries, and if the canary was dead, you'd have the problem. If the canary was singing, you'd have a healthy mine. I like children in the assembly, even noisy ones. Well, actually, especially noisy ones. I don't mind at all. I think it brings life, and we've had a number of people come along. Like, we've got a guy at the moment, and he came from Pentecost, and he said before he came to Medway Revival Fellowship, he said he used to go to churches and he put up with them because it was the best he could find, but he wasn't really satisfied with the way things were done. He said, now I found a place which is different than that. And he said, the other thing is, he said, my children never wanted to go to church. Now they want to go. So they found a place where they feel safe, and they feel they're okay, but there is still, nevertheless, a strength there. I do believe, anyway. No, there is. Yes, I like that picture. It's good, isn't it? They're not weak. It's sometimes you get the wrong idea of turn the other cheek. There may be times for that. But one thing with, a believer has got to provide for his own household. And one thing he has to provide is protection. You have to provide protection for your own household. That's not getting away from the humility. There's a thing in Corinthians where Paul is being ironic with them. He said, you're wise, aren't you? He said, you suffer it if a man slap you in the face, if a man take from you. And he's being ironic that they were letting too much go, And true humility doesn't lack strength. And neither is it something whereby you talk less. It's not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. And it says that the fool doesn't open his mouth in the gate. We don't want to be that. So we don't want. That's right. We don't want to be that. So sometimes it's good to be bold, but it talks about showing your own works with meekness of humility. Talk about yourself and what you've done and what the Lord's done in you. It's not humble. That's not true. It doesn't work. It's a kind of a. They used to have a thing with the Assyrians. The ancient Assyrians used to capture anyone and everyone. They were horrible, and when they caught them, including the Israelites, one of the things they would do, they wanted to humiliate people, so they couldn't rise up against them. And one thing they used to do was cut their lips off. So you end up with this. It's like a grin, a permanent grin, and it's humiliating. And I remember once I was in a shop in Gillingham, in close by anyway, and there was a lady from a church. God bless her, but weak was the word, and she wanted to put a collection tin on the counter of the chip shop, and the guy was busy, but he was very rude. Right, he was very, and you think, tell him to stop that. Right, and she just grinned at him. She just smiled at him, and you think, no. And there was another one. They might have moved on since this, but there was another fella. The kids were little, and it was near Christmas, and we were walking down the high street, and they were bedraggling me. And this fella came up to me, and he said, he's trying to give me a leaflet, and said, "What is it, mate?" And he after about 5 minutes, he said, "Do you want to come for a bowl of soup and a cup of tea?" I said, "What?" And he wanted to talk to me about the Lord. But he was so far away from it that all you can do is tell me about. I was a bit rude, to be honest with you, which I don't recommend, and I'm not proud of. But humility has got strength, and that's the point, along with the way of making it. Yeah, he lies in the shady trees and the coverts of the reeds and the fens. The shady trees cover him with their shadows. The willows of the brook compass him about. Behold, he drinks up a river, and hastens not. He trusts that he can draw up Jordan in his mouth. And he that believes shall not make haste. He's not in a hurry up. He's not under pressure. There's a difference between conviction, which what we want, and pressure, which we don't want. Well, pressure brings anxiety. Anxiety brings activity, actually. But it's not a good one. And he doesn't make haste. That doesn't mean he couldn't make haste. He looks like someone that couldn't get very far very quickly. Yeah, here's a question for you. No tin of custard for this one, just to answer it in your own house. Which is the fastest, Usain Bolt or the hippopotamus? Which one can run the faster? And the answer is hippopotamus. It can do about 30 miles an hour, and Usain can do about 25, or could. You're probably slowing down a bit now. Champ. So he can go fast, the old Behemoth, but he doesn't. And when I was learning to drive, which was before I come to the Lord, you have an L plate on, and then people get behind you, and they beat the horn because you got the L plate on and you're a bit slow. And the instructor, he said a very good thing to me, which I still remember to this day. He says, "Don't let anyone push you along the road." And I think you want to have that in life. He that believes shall not make haste. Here's another question for you. I take it you all know who that was. He was born in a place called Modesto, which is apparently in a place called California, an hour and a half northwest of a place called Fresno. So I take it some people are shouting at the screen now and not being able to do it. His name is Mark Spitz, and he was an Olympic champion. He won 7 gold medals at one particular. So here's a question for you. Which is the best swimmer, Mark Spitz or the hippopotamus? And I'm going to go back with that one. The hippopotamus actually can't swim. So there you go. So if you just quiz questions for you, and he isn't good at everything. He spends a lot of time in the water, or she does. Doesn't matter which one at all. but she isn't good at everything, but still represents this strong humility. So let's look at Leviathan. Okay, as I said, I took that picture myself. I didn't really, and so Leviathan, as I'm saying, it represents a crocodile. Excuse me. Other people claim that it represents a dragon, and I'll show you why they claim that, and I'll show you why it's pretty weak. And as I say, in the ancient world, a dragon was a composite beast and not a beast, if you like. So the Lord's now talking about Leviathan. Says, "I will not conceal his parts, nor his power, nor his comely proportions." This reminds me of Goliath. Okay, so Goliath was a very, very big fella, and it's giving you exactly how big he was. And I suppose that there can be a error among men that if you change the label, you change the situation. If you call something by what it isn't, it changes it. You know, we can be when I was younger, right? So I never used to get into fights much because I had a bit of a problem. Well, I had two problems. One of them was that I couldn't hit people with all my might because I didn't like it. I don't like violence, but they didn't seem to have the same problem. But the other problem was to some degree. I am a physical coward, only to some degree. You know, I wouldn't want to exaggerate that. But you can put it all on the one that I'm being good. You know what I mean? I just like people. You know, rather than sometimes you're a bit afraid and you cover yourself over with this other good thing. You pull the sheet over, if you like, and it doesn't work. You know, you have to see things as they are, and then deal with them. Such like, I've got a little thing about Goliath. Okay, so there's David and Goliath. I've never in my life done Sunday school ever. It just never happened. And one of the kids was 5 last week, and thinking there was things that are 5 in the Bible, and David had 5 smooth stones, and then he killed Goliath, and you think, yeah, that's right. And then what did he do? He chopped his head off, didn't he, and took it in the tent. So I've got this idea for Sunday school, which has caused division in our assembly. It's caused different opinions anyway, not division. See what you think. But I had this idea that all the kids in Sunday school could make a Goliath head, and then 100 things to do with a Goliath head. So the girls could give it long hair and plait the hair like girls like to do, put lipstick on it and eye makeup on it. And the boys could put maybe a light in it, and the light could come out of its eyes, and it could be a night light in their bedroom of a night time. And these all come out of Sunday school with holding their heads in their hands and give it to their mums and dads. The boys seem to like it, and the girls don't. So I don't think it's going to happen anyway. Yes. Yeah. Behold, the hope of him is in vain. Shall not one be cast down, even at the sight of him? And I suppose the thing is, it can be disheartening. It can be intimidating when you come across serious pride. It can be. Marion has a little car. She has the car. I've got a van, and now she's got a bigger car. And when she had the little car, and I was driving on the motorway, most of our motorways are 3 or 4 lanes, and you go on the outside wanted to overtake. You're only allowed to overtake on the outside. So go on the outside lane to overtake, and if there were lorries on the next lane, it used to terrify the life out of me because this car didn't have power really, or just about had power to get past them, but it struggled, and they're right up against you, and you're going as fast as you can. I don't like going fast; it's not my thing, and I physically feel this intimidation. You know, and the thing is, you just have to. She's got a bigger car now, and I've learned a little bit more to relax, but I still don't like it. Sometimes we think, right, in the Lord, we're not supposed to be afraid. Therefore, I'm just going to close, pretend not to be. But that's suppressing the truth is not the way of it. Like, there's certain situations going on here, and I was thinking to myself, I'm afraid of them. Yeah, I'm afraid of them, and I don't look really to change my mind. I look to the Lord Lead me to the rock that is higher than I. When my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. I can't just say, I'm not afraid. Okay, who can discover the face of his garment, or who can come to him with his double bridle? It talks about his scales in a minute, and you never see the skin of a crocodile. You'd only see its scales. A sheep, we're likened to sheep, and if you shear a sheep, it looks silly. It's a silly looking creature when it's just been sheared. It's almost an embarrassment, we live in a world where image can be more important than it should be, and it's not important to us to look good or to sound good all the time. It's not. It's a desire, obviously. Who wants to look stupid? But it's not the aim. It's not the aim. It's just a desire, and certain things we go through will strengthen us anyway. So just about image. This is about image. Leviathan has you never see what's underneath really, and what's underneath isn't very nice anyway. And in ancient Egypt, you see all the carvings of all the pharaohs and all this, and they all look young and beautiful. Well, I suppose they look beautiful. I don't know, but they look perfect. But they didn't look perfect. But they're only ever portrayed as perfect. This is an image of a pharaoh called Akhenaten, and he's most likely to be the pharaoh. Was the first pharaoh after Exodus, and he was different than all the others. In he worshipped one god only. Akhenaten means I worship the light, the truth, and in this you can see Akhenaten is on the one without the kids. Oh yeah, the one holding the kids up. So he's portrayed holding his children, playing with his children, which was never the case. That they're always shown in a powerful pose, and you can see he's got a little pot belly. He's actually portrayed with a pot belly because he didn't care about image. And there's his wife with a child up on her knee, and he's very interesting pharaoh. And in history, the Egyptians cancelled him. They wrote him out of their history. He has a very famous son called Tutankhamun, who wasn't a worshipper of the light. But Tutankhamun's tomb was missing for a long time because nobody knew he existed, which is maybe one of the reasons he didn't rob his tomb. But he didn't care about image, but he worshipped the light. This is Ramesses the Great, who comes a little bit later than Exodus, almost certainly. You know what I mean? It doesn't give you the date. He's in the British Museum, and old Big Ed. Okay, so he dug this out of the sand in Egypt, and he brought it to England in 1780s or 1790s or somewhere around that, and it caused such a fuss. And he's portrayed as perfect. And somebody wrote a poem about it, which I like. Percy Bysshe Shelley, if you pronounce it like that. Percy Shelley has a sister, Mary Shelley. She wrote Frankenstein. But he calls it Ozymandias. And I'll read the poem to you. It says, I met a traveller from an antique land who said 2 vast trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near to them on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, from whose frown and wrinkled lip a sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read, which yet survive stamped upon this lifeless things, the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed, and on the pedestal these words appear. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look upon my works, you mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains round the decay of the colossal wreck, boundless and bare. The lone and level sand stretched far away. And basically what Percy Shelley is saying, for all your greatness, mate, you ended up buried in the sand. That was the end of you. For all your greatness and for all your image, that's all you'd ever wear, is something to be buried in the sand. You know, and I do like the contrast between Ramesses the Great, in that's in the British Museum. The other one's somewhere else. I don't know where the other one is. And standing there, you know, and in the end, it's worth nothing. That was what he was describing. It was more buried in the sand than that. The British didn't steal things from the museum. They dug them out of the sand and rescued them. It's a different story. Okay, his scales and his pride shut up together with a close seal. Remember Behemoth? The Lord says, I can make my sword approach to him. Well, you can't get through to this fella. You know, it's never his fault. There's never anything wrong. He protected. One is so near to another that no air can come between them. This is what it's like. It says, by his neesings a light does shine, and his eyes are like the eyelids of the morning. Neesings are sneezes. I'm not going to particularly go into that. That the Egyptian hieroglyph for a morning was the eye of a crocodile. So again, it ties the idea that this, what's being described as a crocodile, quite strongly, without ever trying to be definitive. Out of his mouth go burning lamps, and sparks of fire leap out. Out of his nostrils goes smoke, as out of a seething pot or cauldron. His breath kindles coals, and a flame of fire goes out of his mouth. Where are we up to? Just trying to find. He's very hot, isn't he? You know, there's a lot of heat here. This is where they say it's a dragon. You know, because fire comes out of his mouth and smoke comes out of his nose. You know, and you think, well, you wouldn't want to make a doctrine out of 2 verses in the Bible. It's representative. It's representative, obviously, of proud wrath. You know, if you'd ever talk to someone, and just as you start talking, they get angry. If you put the kettle on and it boils straight away, it was already hot. And that's good to know. Because when it comes to pride, you want to know what you're dealing with to get your bearings. Because it can be a very strong and a very intimidating thing, and we need to maneuver our way through it and past it. Don't take it on head to head. It's not the way. Normally, it's not the way. So you know, as I say, the Behemoth is a clean beast. It doesn't kill anything normally, although it can. And yes, so something I learned recently, really. Out of his mouth go burning lamps and sparks of fire leap out. We have our meetings on YouTube and Zoom and all this, and so they're all recorded, and it makes me. It's made me more careful how I say things. Not so careful that it's not good. I don't want to go there at all. But sometimes you think I should have worded that maybe a little bit different, maybe a little bit kinder, without changing what I was saying. I'll give you an example. Something I've been mentioning in the last couple of weeks, and you have to get over things to serve the Lord. And when I was younger in the Lord, the pastor that baptized me, when we go to camp, his son, people would say, "Oh, you're the pastor's son," and he'd get angry and he'd say, "I'm not the pastor's son. My name is Ian," right? And he would get angry about it. And then this other pastor's son came over many years later. And I said to him, I made sure to find out his name and call him by his name and not by his dad's name. And I told him the story why I was careful. And he said, if you can't get over that, he said, you can't serve the Lord. Which is just an excellent answer. But I've been telling this story lately, and I thought, well, maybe when I tell the story, I should point out that maybe this brother that I talk about that got angry, maybe that now is a thing of the past. I don't see him anymore. But maybe that's a thing of the past. It was true. The lesson is true. But just add a little bit of a dampener on it in case it causes a fire. So, you know, as I say, being on YouTube, our meetings recorded on YouTube, generally I'm more careful what I say, but I don't want to not say things. And I like what it's done to me. You don't want to set things unnecessarily on fire. Yeah. Even though, you know, what I'm saying is right. You can be right and unkind. You want to lose one of them and not the other. It's not enough to be right. In his neck remains strength, and sorrow is turned to joy before him. He's stiff-necked. Let's get through that one. When he raises himself up, the mighty are afraid. By reason of breakings, they purify themselves. You can look into all the words, but, you know, I don't know if you've ever been in the situation where people start making the sign of the cross when they're a little bit afraid. And it's a little bit like this. You know, we don't do that, obviously. And but sometimes if something's intimidating, the thing to do is, as I say, is get your bearings. Don't try to deny or go along and pretend that suppress the fact that you feel intimidated. Get your bearings. If something's spinning you around quickly, when they have ice skating and all this type of thing and dancing, the dancers, so as not to get dizzy, fix themselves on a particular point and keep going back to it. So despite the fact that they're being spun around quickly, the way not to get dizzy is fix yourself on certain things. And there are certain things, you know, in a situation like that, you can fix yourself on your identity. Maybe you don't need to do anything, or you don't need to say anything, and fixed points help you to get through. I like this one. We're coming close to the end, by the way. I like this one a lot. I'm going to show you because I've missed one verse off of Behemoth, and this is really want to contrast these two. We want to be like one, and the opposites, and not the opposites of it, and the opposites of the other. He esteems iron as straw, and brass as rotten wood. Okay, so from what I've heard in talks in the past, iron represents law. You know, Jesus is going to rule the nations with a rod of iron, and I'm not quite sure exactly what that means, but I think it's used in the Old Testament to represent law, and brass is judgment. So he that's proud breaks the laws. They don't apply to him. You know, somebody asked one of the pastors one time. He said, "I'm not under the law, so I can break the speed limit, can I?" And he said, "No." He said, "If you to walk in the Spirit, he said, drive in the Spirit as well." And I thought that was a good answer. It wasn't me; it was someone else. And we're in a position now, aren't we, that we've been given instructions from the government. Has changed quite a lot, and they're quite complicated, and they're hard to keep up with. But the aim is to keep up with them. I was saying today that you know, it says submit yourself to every ordinance of man. And what I got from looking at the word ordinance, you can get into the word dogma if you go down the line a fair little bit. And dogma means their opinion, or what they believe is best. And that's what we're to subject ourselves to. Well, like in America, the speed limit is 55 mostly. Over here, it's 70. In Holland, after 10 o'clock, it's as fast as you like. So there are differences of opinions. But we don't put our opinion above their opinion, because the Lord says not to. We don't esteem the iron as straw, something that we can break because we are us. Because apparently 80% of drivers believe they're in the top 20% of drivers. Do you know that? Can't be true, can it? You know, and it doesn't matter what you think of yourself in the way of your driving. It matters that you come within the rules for conscience sake, as well as the law. And you know, if the policeman stops you, you'll be telling them all the reasons why it didn't apply to you, and he'll be taking no notice while he writes out the ticket or whatever he does over there. Yes. Don't know where we're going. Nearly there. Okay, so this is back to Leviathan. So he's the opposite in this way. His bones are the strongest pieces of brass. His bones are like bars of iron. So, and his bones, I think it's talking about his chest bones, his ribs, and they keep his heart. So by keeping God's judgment, and by keeping God's law, and keeping under and being people that are instructed. When I first realised that that the word of God was the word of God, the next thing I wanted was instruction. I knew that I needed it. I just didn't know where to go for it. But the Lord knew where to lead me. You know, we are under authority, and that partly goes with faith. But the contrast between the two is fabulous. we keep ourselves, right? The Leviathan, the crocodile churns up the water. That's one of the ways it kills its prey. Is it spins them into the mud. It gets hold of something, takes it down to the bottom, and spins it into the mud, and throws up. It says here, the wicked are like troubled sea when it cannot rest, whose waters cast up mire and dirt. There is no peace, my God, is for the wicked. And in any situation, we want things, especially so far as the word of God goes, to be clear. Our emotions might be chained up. We might prefer one thing to another, but we want the word of God to be clear, that we can be instructed, because that's the way to go. Okay, so if Behemoth and Leviathan has a fight, hopefully there's no sound on this. There is sound on it, but I hope I've put it on. It's 3 minutes and then we're nearly done. Yeah, no sound. I don't want sound. I'm being. So the wildebeest. This is South Africa. There's the wildebeest, and you can see behemoths in the water, but something else is going to come. Here it comes. You missed it with the camera, but you'll see it in a minute. The crocodile has got hold of a wildebeest. And another crocodile. Trying to get it in the water and spin it on the ground. That's what they do. He's got away. Here come the hippos to the rescue. Seems a long time when you watch. I think it's only 3 minutes. That won't be long, but then it seems to take forever. Anyway, in the end, they rescue our friend. So when there's a need, they can be pretty aggressive to drive away that which is not. There's that word. It's the scientific name for the fear of long words. I told you the answer was in front of you. Sally got it, I think. I think it was Sally. So she's won a tin of custard. High prizes indeed. That's all, folks.